When you hear the word burnout, what do you think about? Physical exhaustion, mental fog, maybe just straight up apathy? As a business owner, you're probably just used to pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and powering through. We've all heard the saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, right? But how long can you keep this up before you hit a breaking point? Before it affects your personal health, your business, your family, and your team? From the Ramsey Network, this is the EntreLeadership podcast, where we help business leaders grow themselves, their teams, and their profits. I'm your host, George Camel, and in today's episode, we've got 2 interviews on the business driver of personal around this topic of burnout. In our first interview, I sat down with Dr. John Delony. John is a leading voice on relationships and emotional wellness, and he's one of our Ramsey personalities and hosts the Dr. John Delony Show. Then, in our second interview, we've got Ramsey leader Luke Lefevre on how to avoid burnout from a personal experience of his. Up first, we've got our conversation with John. We talked about burnout, what it is, what it's not, and how to know if it's happening to you. Now, burnout has become a word that people throw around a lot these days, but what does it actually mean?
We hear it like, I'm burnt out on Chick-fil-A, I'm burnt out on whatever. It's kind of become this catch-all for, I don't want to do that anymore, or I don't like that anymore, right? At the end of the day, burnout is when your body says, enough, I'm out, right? So burnout can be that deep exhaustion, not when you're tired, but when you're just exhausted, right? When you're absolutely just fried, or when you have that feeling that nothing's helping, right? There's no amount of work that you're doing is going to get you out of the situation that you're in. Or when you're treading water as hard as you can, when you're fighting as hard as you can, you're trying to run as hard as you can, your body eventually just says, dude, I'm out, right? So think of it as your body saying, I don't care how hard, how tough, or how would it snap into a Slim Jim, bro. I'm out.
There's
done.
no amount of pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's beyond just an exhaustion.
Yeah.
It's not just I'm tired at the end of the day, and I don't have brain power.
So there's this, I'd call it a shapeshifter book for me. It's a book by the Nagoski sisters and called Burnout. And it was written for professional women. I got a lot out of it. It's a marvelous book, and here's why. I've always known emotions to be signals, right? So somebody comes in, you get pissed off, you get angry, you get frustrated, right? You and I, our offices are right next to each other. I'm real messy. You're very neat. And so you walk in.
Offices is generous. They're just desks.
Our cubicles and our what do they call it? Workstations.
There it
Makes
is.
me feel like we're on a spaceship or something. Like, go back to your workstation. That's probably an overstatement, but it is. And you come by, I see it. You have to inhale. Like, it's hard for you to walk by my station because it's a wreck. It's embarrassing.
I'm pretty OCD, pretty clean, and you are mad scientist.
I'm not that, right? So your emotions are a signal, right? That guy needs to clean that up. That's driving me crazy. That's out of order, right? And I always know about the trauma response and how that kicks off a cascade of chemicals. The Nagoski sisters, they pointed back to that emotion, right? That signal, that gong that says, hey, you need to get connected again. Something matters to you. You're frustrated, you're angry, whatever. That is a cascade of chemicals that your body kicks off. It dumps you into fight. It dumps you into flight. If you can't go anywhere, it dumps you into freeze. And you got to let that cycle run its course, or all that cortisol and adrenaline, all that stuff stays trapped in your body for days and days and days, right? And it begins to poison you from the inside out. Think about trying to clean your pipes with Drano. You pour them down your pipes. You know, I know you're a big plumber guy,
I've done
right?
it.
Have you?
Yeah, once or twice.
Have you? Okay. So you pour Drano in your pipes and it can clean it out, right? If you just every morning got up and dumped Drano down there and every night dumped Drano down there, in short order, it would burn a hole through those pipes. That's what happens to our bodies, man, if we don't cycle this stuff through. We just sit on it and sit on it and sit on it. And that's burnout, man. Our bodies just say, hey, we're out. You clearly don't know what you're doing. You can't drive this thing. We're putting it into neutral and we're going to pull over.
So what causes people to get to that point? Are there certain things, as a business owner that, hey, if you get into these kinds of patterns, you're probably well on your way to burnout?
I think it's not honoring that cycle. It's not honoring that system. It's thinking that you know more than your body does. It's thinking I can push beyond limits. There is no I'm not tethered to reality when it comes to how little sleep I can get, what kind of foods I'm putting in my body, how much I think I can do, how much I think I can earn and accomplish and achieve without coming back to earth, man, without without paying the piper on the other side of that teeter-totter, right? So you can, I don't know, you can have seasons where you can run really hard, but if that becomes your life, if you try to live life with, I'm just going to be on 24/7, 365. I'm going to deal with my kids when I get to my kids. My wife, she'll figure it out. My husband, he's going to be there no matter what. Man, there's going to be a price to pay.
And it reminds me of your talk that you did at EntreLeadership Summit, where you were talking about bricks and stories and the bricks in our backpack. And it feels like that kind of stuff, as we carry it around, can lead us to that burnout. So unpack, what do you mean by bricks in the backpack?
So, man, you know what, George? I'm putting this together in real time here. It's an Entre exclusive.
We're watching it happen live, folks.
Yeah, you're watching. There's a smoke start coming out of my ears here. Man, so stay with me on this. So you have these stories you carry around. A lot of them are imprinted when you're a kid, right? That coach told you, hey, you can't do this. You suck at this. Or you were abused, or your mom, when she got mad, she just quit talking to you. And you're a 7-year-old wondering, what is so unlovable about me that my mom won't even talk to me, right? Or your dad would grab your shirt and scream at you. In this house, we don't miss free throws. You know what I mean? Whatever the thing was, the stories that you were born into, or you were the wrong color in the wrong neighborhood, or you didn't have the right shoes in the right school, or whatever the thing was, right? These stories become your biology, right? They set off alarms in your body to say, hey, you're not welcome here. You're not safe here. You're not smart enough to be here. And dude, we carry that stuff with us our whole life. And so the analogy that I like to use is those stories become bricks that you just carry around. And most of us don't even know we're carrying them. The story I told at Entre Summit was, man, in first place for going for a 10-year sweep in the district track meet my senior year in high school. I was anchoring the mile relay, and I dropped the baton. I've never even seen a mile relay baton dropped. It's a slow handoff, man. We're looking at each other. I'm cheering him on, and I dropped it. And we lost the meet by 1 point. We lost winning a decade sweep by 1 point. I didn't realize that here I am 20, 30 years later, and whenever it says, all right, Delony, you're the last one to go, I instantly think, I don't want to go last. That's still in there, man. It's so cheesy and ridiculous. I make good money. I got a cool job. It's still in there, right? So these bricks we carry all the time, that sets us up for, what am I trying to do every day to achieve, to solve, to numb those stories that are just that are spinning, right? That are always going. And so those bricks that we carry around all day, every day, that contributes to this stress cycle that we set off. That contributes to, hey, I got to deal with this employee. Oh, man, it's probably your fault. It's probably your fault, so I'm not going to fire him. I'm just going to let this cancer just stay here in my organization. Or, you're such a wimp, dude. I'm going to go in there screaming and yelling, and everyone's like, whoa, back it down, right? In distress response just goes and goes and goes. I never deal with it. Boom, I'm burnt out.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of business is making decisions. And if you're making decisions based on that biology and
on
based
stories,
on those bricks
right?
and stories, that's going to affect your life. Yeah. And you're going to be striving for this thing over here, and it's going to be hard to make it all match up.
Hey, and this is important too. You may have had parents who told you you're the smartest thing that ever lived. You may have had a third grade teacher who's like, you're a genius. And you may now look up 20, 30 years later, you're running a business, and you are the smartest person alive, right? And anybody who challenges you or says, I don't think that's the right idea. What if we did it like this? Fired. You're an idiot, right? Those stories can over-sensationalize as well as under-sensationalize too, right? But the thing here is there's always a physiological toll. Your body, to quote Bessel van der Kolk, your body is always keeping the score. It remembers whether you do or not. It's always getting the environment for someone else is going to hurt you, someone else who's going to affirm what you think about you, up or down. It's constantly spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. And so you can pretend that's not happening, but it does, man. And so our knees hurt, our back hurts, we have headaches, all that stuff is happening. And then all of a sudden one day we're like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care. And that's the Nagassi sisters. They walk through the three, what would you call them? The 3 stages of burnout. It's that exhaustion that I cannot get up, right? A lot of us felt that, like, midway through COVID, like, dude, I cannot look at my children. I eat whatever. I don't care, right? You want to go out in the yard and eat go knock your lights out. I don't care. Hey, I got 8 cases of Twinkies. Eat them all today. I don't care, right?
Yeah.
That's number 2. It's that depersonalization. Normally, I'm a caring, connected person. I don't care.
There's
whatever.
just an apathy towards life.
I don't care. That's the number 3 is that deep sense of futility. Nothing I do matters, man. It doesn't matter what's happening right now. When those 3 things happen, you're not yourself. You're disconnected, man. You just think everything I do, it doesn't matter. I'm always going to have a boss like this. I'm never going to be able to satisfy that customer. I'm never going to get on top of my stuff. That's the alarm sounding that you're burnt out.
So I want to talk about prevention and recovery. Let's start with recovery. Let's say the business leaders
I
listening.
love how you're using addiction language.
Yes.
Hey, you're right on, though, man.
I'm spot on.
That's perfect.
You've taught me well.
That's
for
good,
for the business leader listening who's going, oh my gosh, John's reading my mail, and I think I'm in that stage, or I'm trying to come out of that burnout. What are the steps that leaders can take to start to walk out of that?
So think about the way our bodies are designed to deal with stress. We really got 3 triggers. We got fighting, we got running, we've got freezing, right? So the first 2 choices are our best option, right? I'm going to get out of here. There's a bear at the front of the cave. I'm going to get out of here. The second one is, hey, dude, I can't get out of this cave. Grab a stick. It's me versus the bear. It's probably not going to end well for you, but if you're a gangster fighter like you, George, you're going to come out on top.
You know me
That's right.
well. So many fights I get into.
The third option, which is the worst of the 3, but it's the best you got, is body goes into neutral. We're frozen. That's where your body says, you know what? That bear's going to come over and gnaw on a leg. He's going to take it with him, but we're going to get to tomorrow. All right, that's the goal. And so that's what depression, all right? That's when your body just says, hey, shove all that crap down. We're out. We're going to check out. We're going to get beat up. But we're going to survive, right? So think about when you show up at the office and that idiot employee shows up. You can't fire him because...
I don't know why you pointed to me when you said idiot employee.
It was an accident.
Okay.
It was a little bit Freudian. Kind of my hand just went to you like one of those watering sticks or whatever. So you can't fire him because we're just printing money and handing out checks. And so there's not a lot of people in line for this job, right? See what I did there? Yeah. That was like my little subtle political dig. I'm trying to get better at those. So you can't just fire him, or you don't want to deal with it. And it sounds cool at an entree, like, you just fire him. Firing's hard, man. I've had to fire a lot. I don't like it. So I'm going to avoid it. So boom, my body goes into fighting or fleeing. And what are our options these days? I can't go hit him, right? He's going to call HR on me. And if you're a small business, HR is me, right? I'm going to go to jail. I can't just run away from him forever. And so what do? Here's what I do, George. I open up my laptop and I write him up. Or like, I'll send a mean email. And then after I send my showed you email, then I'm going to text my wife about how tough I am. Dude, all of that stuff is still coursing through my body. It's not solved at all, right? This is what I get really annoyed by. There is an entire, I'm just going to make up a number because it's going to help my cause here, an $80 trillion industry.
Sounds about right.
Give or take-ish, self-care industry. You know what you need when you're burnt out? A candle and a warm bath. It's gonna bring you back. You know what you need? You need to ride a horse. Actually, that could actually help. So I take that one back. But like, it's this whole. You know what you need? You just need some lavender essential oil under your eyelids, or I don't know where you.
That could work too.
Listen, entree leaders, don't put essential oils under your eyelids. That's probably gonna burn your eyeballs out. I don't know.
Real painful.
But there's this idea that you can just deal with this surface level nonsense, and you're gonna get to it. So to circle all the way back and answer your full question. By the way, if you're wondering, did me and George get any work done in the office?
What a journey we've taken just with this one question.
Very, very little. So here's what you got to do. And this is, again, straight from that book. It's straight from, this is research backed. So this isn't just me making this stuff up. You first got to address the meaning of what you're doing here, right? So if you're a plumber trying to change, like, I want to change the face of plumbing in America, right? Or I am a HVAC person in Texas. I want to change the face of HVAC in Texas. Well, you know what? Their power grid doesn't work super great right now. And so you're probably not going to do that. And every day, if you're going to work trying to change the face of HVAC in Texas, you're going to get burned out because you're going to realize, dude, I'm treading water. I'm going nowhere. So sit back and ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you may have to readjust your meaning, which may be, I want to make sure that every person that reaches out to me and says, hey, I need help, they're going to feel honored and dignified, and they're going to get their power. They're going to get their needs taken care of. You can do that, right? So sometimes it's rescaling down or rescaling up what your mission is, what making meaning of what you're doing. And then, dude, nobody likes this, especially in the Western world, but you got to move your body. You've got to discharge this stuff. That's why all the research circling back now is saying, man, you want to start addressing anxiety, you want to start addressing depression, you want to start exercise, dude. Go move. You've got to move. Then you've got to be in relationships. You've got to have skin-to-skin contact. You've got to sleep, George.
Sleep.
EntreLeaders, listen, I'm pointing at a camera, and I know most of you are listening to this. You have to sleep. You've got to sleep. It's a reset. It's a control-alt-delete for your brain, right? You've got to breathe, be creative, be grateful, live a life of gratitude. There's all these things that sound all woo-woo and cheesy, and I'm thinking right now, there's some dude in Kentucky driving his plumbing truck, and he's going to pick up one of his idiot coworkers screwed something up, and he's going to fix it. And he's thinking, did he just say be creative and gratitude? What are you talking about, dude? He's like covered in, I don't know, like that PVC, that purple stuff on the connects PVC pipe.
I love the visual here.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this guy.
Of course we do. And he's saying, what? I got to be grateful? Yes, you do. I don't have time to go to sleep. You have to, right? So there's some very basic things you got to do to take care of your body. And then your body goes this, George, it's amazing. It'll say, oh, cool, we're back in control. I'm going to shut off the spigot, man. I'm going to quit pulsing all these chemicals through our body. We're good. And we'll get up and start again tomorrow.
All of that reminds me of your hosing off the boots analogy. When I first heard this, I had no context because I've never had to hose off boots.
I realized that was a very Texas analogy.
Very Texas, but I love the heart behind it. So share with the listeners what you mean by hosing off the boots.
This is a PG podcast, so I'll go. If you're out shoveling crap all day, you can't take those same boots that you were out working with and walk through your living room. It's disrespectful to your home, to your kids, to your spouse. Like, you got to leave your boots outside and you got to hose them off because you got to go back out to work the next day. The analogy is, dude, you've got to have a process. If you're a hard-working, exhausted, small business owner, you're trying to deal with these yo-yo, county regulations and state regulations, and people are upset, and you're just trying to help people out. The power grid's going out, our pets' heads are falling off, all of that. Man, you've got to have a process every day to say, workday's over. I'm hosing these boots off. I'm not going to drag this crap into my house so my kids have to deal with it, so my wife has to deal with it, so my husband's got to deal with it. I'm going to clean it off, and that goes back to that process that we talked about. Man, that is, did I accomplish today what I needed to accomplish? What are the things I could control? Did I do those things? What did I accomplish making meaning today? Do I have an exercise program? Am I going to reach out to some friends? Am I going to talk to people? Am I going to hug my wife for 20 seconds without stopping? It's doing those things that help you be well, so you can get up and then go be the dad or mom or husband or kid, whatever you need to be, and then get back out there tomorrow and go get them again.
Well, as you're talking about this, it almost sounds like the recovery advice is the same as the prevention advice.
Here's the thing. Exactly. Genius. You don't even need to go to grad school, man. You figured it out. The prescription for all of this stuff is to create a life with enough margin to handle the crazy days, to have friends in your life because they are, they're to use Dave's word, they're the emergency fund for your life. There's going to be seasons when you can't handle it all, right? You've got to have other people in your life. And this myth that I could do it all myself, you can't. I promise, dude. My dad was a SWAT guy and a hostage negotiator in Houston, Texas. The joke I use around here is I grew up in the place where they process the leather, and then I spent 20 years in Lubbock, Texas. That's where they grow the cows to make the leather. So I've seen it end to end of this imaginary bootstraps I'm supposed to pull myself up by. Dude, it's a myth. It's not real. It can't happen. One thing is going to happen. You're going to crash. And you're going to take people with you. You're going to collapse your business. Or you're going to burn out. You're going to drive everyone around you crazy. And you're going to end up all by yourself, man. And so, yes, the prevention here is create a life that you want to live. Choose to make less money so that you have more joy and happiness in your life. Make that decision, man. Drive a 10-year older truck. It's still going to get you from point A to point B. But if that keeps you from having to redline everything in your life where you don't have time to be around people, to exercise your body, to read books, to be around people, to have a faith community, then dude, drive the older truck, for crying out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take one less job, right? So yes, you're exactly right.
And you're talking about being in community, having good friendships. Is that the place where a leader can kind of vent when you're feeling like you're heading towards this burnout, you're feeling like you're in this stage? Who's the right person to go to?
Dude, there's some really fascinating research on venting and anger. And it's really shifted the way we think about, we being mental health nerds, about how to quote unquote express your anger. Think of it as, don't think of it as, it's a groove in your brain. And if you're angry, it used to be, hey, you need to get that anger out, right? You need to go vent, get that out of there. Now what we've realized is we're just re-grooving we're digging that groove deeper. We are making it more likely that's going to become a default for us. So if you feel like, I just got to vent, write it down. Write it down. Write down the things that you're frustrated with, write down what you're feeling, and then write down things you're grateful for. Do it all at the same time, right? Find a mentor to say, hey, am I thinking about this the right way? Or here's some things I'm working through right now. But if you go to somebody just to be like, yeah, man, you're going to lose. They're not going to want to hang out with you anymore. And it's a wrong approach. But yes, you've got to find people you can say, I'm struggling with this. Somebody who's ahead of you in business, somebody who's got something just like you, someone who's coming up, right? So you're part of that whole cycle. But you got to have people that you can say, dude, I'm over my head right now. Give me some wisdom and perspective on this.
Well, I want to do a little lightning round here if you're okay with it. I want to walk you through some different scenarios that might connect with the business leaders listening, and they may go, yep, that one's me, 100%. And you're just going to quickly tell us what to do if we're that person. Sound good?
Can I be real direct?
Yes. As direct as you can be, just don't scare me.
All right.
All right. Let's say you're the owner who feels like it all depends on you to solve the problems. They don't believe that they can ask their team for help, and the weight is more than they can carry.
You're a bad leader. You probably shouldn't be leading. If you've hired people that you don't trust to ask input on, then you've hired wrong people. Fire them all and hire new people, right? If you think you can do this all by yourself, you're fooling yourself. This whole thing ends in ash. That's the truth.
That was pretty direct. You weren't lying. Okay. How about this one? The person whose successes and failures define their identity as a business owner, and since the business is their baby, if something fails, they equate themselves to being a failure.
Man, that's the stories you tell yourself, right? Somewhere along the way, somebody told you your value is in your output or your value is in success. And so Jocko says it best, you got to detach, right? You are not your wins and you're not your failures. You are the relationships you had on the way. You are how hard you worked. You are, did you cheat, lie, or steal, like the character you were on that journey? But dude, the outcome is the outcome. You take care of the process, man. The outcome happens. Kevin Durant can practice all day long. Sometimes the ball can go in. He shot it right. He had good form. He jumped high, did everything right. Ball didn't go in, right? It doesn't mean he's a failure and a loser. He may have lost that game. He's still going to go to the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah. This one sounds like me. This sounds like the people pleaser.
Yes. Hey, one of my favorite things is when you do interviews, you sneak in personal questions.
Yeah, I need this for me, John.
Great. What do you do when your breath doesn't smell good and you're at a work event?
This is so
Just
good.
saying.
This is me, John. The person who says yes to the customer at the expense of saying no to themselves, and they feel like they can't let their customer down, so it keeps them from doing anything for themselves.
Again, that goes back to a story that somebody told you, that you are responsible for taking care of everybody else, and you don't have enough value to take care of, right? You're not worth taking care of. And what happens is you can do that in the short term. You can put other people's needs ahead of your own. That's an airplane that has no gas in it. It will crash, right? So you have to choose to take care of you so that you can better take care of your customers.
Well, you mean the airplane advice is put the mask on everyone else first.
Correct.
And then yourself last.
That's exactly right. That's actually the way to make sure everybody dies, right? Because your kid is going to start fussing around and moving. Your customer's going to have, I wanted it like this. And you're like, I'm real sure, ma'am, because I recorded it. It looks like this. Oh, I want to change it like this. Sir, I promise. You signed it. I don't care what I signed. I want it like this. Now you're both dead, right? You got to get a good night's sleep. You got to make sure you're being a good steward of your body, taking care of your relationships. And then when whatever crap comes your way, you've got margin and strength and clear mind, clear-headedness. You can handle that, man.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting if you're trying to help everyone else to the point that you get burnt out. well, then you can't help anyone.
You help nobody,
at any level.
right? And again, somewhere along the way, that's a common story that we're told. Your job is to make sure I'm okay. It's when parents say things like, you really made daddy mad, or you made me do this, or honey, if you wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't have got so mad. Well, I'm telling my 6-year-old that she's responsible for the emotional intelligence of her grown-up adult parents.
Yeah.
That's too much for a 6-year-old to carry. And then she takes that into her business world, or he takes it into his small business that he owns, and he believes it's his job to make sure every person around them is taken care of before they are. And man, you cannot do that.
That's a recipe for some serious resentment.
It's just it's going to end up in ashes. That's right. So George, take care of yourself, man.
That one was for me.
That was for
Thank you, John. All right, this one's for someone else. For the person...
That's code, podcasters, to this one's about him, too.
This one's not me.
Go ahead.
Someone who's maybe they're faced with a reality they don't like, and the mindset typically falls into acceptance. They don't believe what they're not changing, they are choosing. Summed up, maybe a leader's burning out. They've lost the belief they have any control in their life.
Yeah. You got to reach out and talk to somebody, right? If you're looking around and realize everything around you feels futile, like that you're just treading water, never going to get anywhere, slow down and back out and talk to somebody. That's a recipe that you're getting hyper anxious, right? You are depressing. Your body's starting to take over, right? When everything feels caustic. One of the things our brains do, George, whenever we experience real fear, think about this, like you're almost in a wreck once, right? Or maybe you were in a wreck. Somebody peeled off in front of you, sideswiped you. For the rest of your life, there's a part of your brain that is on alert all times when you're in the car for a sideswipe. And you might feel your heart rate go up a little bit, or if somebody, you look out of the corner of your eye and you see them coming, you've got to let your heart and mind know I'm okay, right? And you've got to do that work.
Mm. Well, we talked about community, accountability, friendships, and this one I'm sure you've taken a lot of calls about. This is the leader who knows how to lead people, they know how to get the results, but they don't know how to have a friend.
Man, that's me. Right, that's me. I'm an awkward guy. I like weird things. I've got an eclectic mix of things that I love. And I struggle with trusting people, right? It's just a hard thing for me. And so it was about 5 or maybe 10 years ago, I realized there's no like swipe right app for 35 or 40-year-old dudes. Like, hey, man,
someone make an app for that.
I like the Astros and I don't want to talk. I like not real expensive beer, but not cheap. There's no, I still like my cargo shorts.
That's true.
But my shirts don't fit good. There's no app for that, right? And you want to come over and just not talk and then just go home? That doesn't exist, right? So I had to look at the science and look at the mess that was the world around me that I'd created and say, man, I got to learn how to have friends. And that sounds stupid because we all think you just learn how to have friends. Look at your kids. You just put them in a room and they just go. But they don't know about judgment. They don't know about what they can and can't do. They don't know about I'm supposed to. They just go play, man. And so I had to learn as an adult, dude, I'm a person of value. Yes, I'm weird, but so is everybody else. And I'm going to go hang out. And sometimes it's weird and awkward. And that's fine. I had to have people over to my house, dude, and say, hey, I know this is going to be super weird, but I'm asking you to be my friend. I want to be your friend. And they were like,
this is now weird.
Dude, you just took your weird to a whole new level. And I say, that means I'm going to show up in the middle of the night. If you ever need something, holler at me. I'm going to show up to your kid's game. I'm not some weird stalker. I just want your kid to know that if you're not around or if something goes on, I'm a safe person they can call. And I'm going to invite you to my kids' games. You don't have to come, but I'd love you to be there. It was just these awkward conversations. And dude, it was transformational. I'd forward a podcast to a buddy and say, hey, I want you to listen to this and we're going to go hiking. And I just want to talk to you about it. He listened to it, man. Or he said, I'm not listening to that stupid thing, but let's go hiking anyway, right? So there's just, you got to put yourself out there. And it's awkward and feels like you're getting cut from your junior high team sometimes when someone's like, dude, I don't want to hang out with you. So important, man.
Yeah, especially for the men out there. I think they have a real hard time creating deep friendships and getting to that level where they can be
socialization,
vulnerable.
Man. It's just so dumb. We've got to get over. Dude, it's you may have talked about on this podcast, the diseases of despair. We're literally dying. We are literally dying. I read a remarkable book by Thomas Joyner. He's a researcher out of Florida State. It's called Lonely at the Top. He just says, if you look across the world, in every single culture, men have most of the leadership roles, most of the money, and they They lead Earth in strokes, heart attacks, cancers. They lead Earth in everything. There's a cost to winning, and it's dying young, right?
Yeah.
And so stepping back and saying, what are we trying to do here, man? And a lot of that starts with friendship, with getting connected with other people.
When you talk about how winning won't make you well, and I feel like that's very connected to this burnout. So as we wrap here.
But you can be well and win, right? So it works the other way. I'm not saying, you shouldn't be ambitious and you shouldn't want to buy your neighbor's company or buy your neighbor. I want to buy I hope they're not listening to this. I hope to buy their land too, right?
They're definitely not listening.
Yeah, I hope not. I'm going to get like an offer in the mail. It's going to be triple what it's worth. I'd like to do that, right? So I'm an ambitious guy. I want to do things. But I know that buying my neighbor's field is not going to make me feel better about myself. It's not going to help my marriage get better. It's not going to help me be a better dad. I got to do those things first. And that will inform my ability to go out and do these other things long term, right? Dave says it all the time. Dave Ramsey, our boss, says, dude, I reread that stupid book every year, and the tortoise always wins, man. And so it's just knowing I got to take care of this stuff so that I can take care of this stuff, not in spite of, right?
Yeah. So to recap here, we've got some themes. Obviously, winning won't make you well. Hose off your boots. Friends are the emergency fund for your life. Any other advice that can help the business leaders out there avoid or recover from this burnout?
Burnout is not a thought problem. It's a physical issue, right? So if you find yourself in a situation in a day, which most of us do, that, man, our alarms got set off. You were in a traffic jam and you just were squeezing that steering wheel tighter and tighter. Your kid calls you and you just get off the rails. Your spouse says something to you that sets you off. You're in a couple of hard meetings during the day, and then a client of yours says, hey, I'm thinking about putting this back out to bid, even though they'd promised you they weren't, right? You have a physiological tool. You've entered a process. You've got to complete that cycle, right? You've got to go move and be with people and eat right and sleep and go do something creative and go watch a funny movie. You've entered a process whether you want to or not. You can choose to not complete that cycle, and you will pay a physical toll, right? You'll pay a price for it. Or you can go do it. You're not going to feel suddenly magically better, but your body says, cool, George is back in control now. I'm going to shut the alarms off because you're good. And you're still going to be pissed off. You're still going to be angry. You're still going to be frustrated, but you're not going to be burning a hole through your pipes, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, John, thanks for taking some time today to help our listeners avoid and recover from that burnout. And thank you for the work you do every day on the Dr. John Delony Show, helping people be well and be whole.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you letting me hang out with you and the Entre crew.
As John talked about, your body is always keeping score. You can pretend the aches and pains aren't happening, but if you don't deal with them, it can really mess you up. So what can you do if you're experiencing physical symptoms of burnout? I sat down with Luke Lefevre, Chief Creative Officer here at Ramsey Solutions, to talk about how he experienced some physical symptoms of burnout years ago. His body was telling him, stop doing what you're doing.
It was 2010, and my wife and I had been down here in Nashville for about a year and a half, I think. I'm going to mess up my timeline. But we had been down here. We moved away from everybody we knew up in Illinois. Come down here, starting a new job, leave everybody we know, and then you're just with your wife, and we had a little kid at the time, 2.5. She was pregnant with our second. She had just had our second, actually. And new job, new place, and we kind of started to struggle at home. So I was stressed at work, and it's hard work here. You know, we're working. It's a lot. It's pushing myself. And then at home we were struggling too. And I was at work, sitting at my desk doing. I was a designer at the time, doing some work. And my friend Tim Newton, he's been on here before. He's sitting across from me, and I look over at him, and I'm like, "Hey, is something happening on my face?" Because I just felt like tingly or something. And he looks at me, and he kind of goes, "Goo!"
Just frightened by you.
And I'm like, "Oh no!" And so I get up and I go to the bathroom, and I look in the mirror, and my top lip has started to swell up. And it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. But it was definitely noticeable, and I didn't know what was going on. I was like, "Did I eat a bad jalapeno at lunch or
just
something?"
An allergic
like,
reaction?
No,
like, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. And it was like 3:30 in the afternoon. So I was like, "Will you take me over to the walk-in in case my throat starts swelling up?" You know,
yeah,
I didn't know what was going to happen. So we go over to this walk-in clinic, and they don't know what's happening either. They give me this EpiPen. They're like, I don't know, if your throat starts swelling, stab your leg. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Didn't know that was how they do it.
I don't know. They probably were more professional than that. But and so I just go home and I'm like, well, look at my face. And over the course of 24 hours, it kind of goes away. And I'm just like, what the heck was that? So I go back to work, go back to doing the things that I do. Didn't stop doing what I was doing and just kind of went back to it and was like, well, that must have just been some bad food or something. I don't know.
You did not connect it to anything you were doing at work. You thought it was just like a dietary thing.
Yeah. And I didn't connect it to anything going on in my life. It was just, what was that? A couple weeks later, it was the middle of the night. I'm sleeping and I wake up and it literally was like 3 a.m. and I just feel like my face feels funny again. And so I feel my face and I'm like, what is happening? So I stumble out of bed, I go in the bathroom and I flip on the light and my bottom lip is giant swelled up. Like, have you seen Hitch?
Oh yeah.
Will Smith, not his whole face, but the bottom lip was just giant, just my bottom lip, like a clown character. And I'm staring at it and I have pictures that you're trying to convince me to put on the internet and it's not going to happen.
Put it on the internet.
It's not going to happen. That I just was like, what is happening? My face swelled up. Okay. So that was early December, I think it was by that point. And again, I don't know what's going on. 24 hours go by and it goes down. Well, I obviously didn't go to work that day. I'm not going to show up to work because it was, all anybody would talk about.
You would have not gone any work.
It would not
done.
have happened.
Yeah.
So it goes down again. At this point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to call an allergist. I'm going to call somebody. A couple weeks go by. Again, it kind of goes away. I wake up Christmas morning, December 25th, 2010, and I was at my wife's parents' house. We're at their house. I wake up Christmas morning and I go into the bathroom and my entire face, my ears, my eyebrows, it looks like I'd been in a fight, was just swelled up. And I don't know what it was. And so we go through Christmas, we get back to work, back to life, and I go to an allergist. They poke me with all the things an allergy test does, and it says I'm allergic to everything. I've never been allergic to anything in my life before. Nothing. And they do these tests where they poke you with all the different ragweed and all this stuff, and they literally said, you're allergic to everything. And I'm just going to have to go get different sheets and different curtains and all this stuff. And I'm like,
how have you survived up until this point?
Exactly. I'm like, no, this is not true. What happened over that time is my hands started to swell up. My eyelid would swell up occasionally. I didn't really know why. But over time, I could start to see when I was really stressed, this would happen. And it's weird and embarrassing to say it, but Jen Sievertson, she's been on this podcast, and Suzanne Sims, they've been on this podcast before. And at the time, they were my direct leaders. And Jen would be like, so how you doing today, Luke? And I'd be like, I'm totally fine. But she could tell my eyelid was like sort of swelled up a little bit.
Gosh.
And they started to call it my tell. Like if I was stressed, I'd be like, no, I'm fine. And then poof, like a puffer
Your
fish.
Your face would just explode.
I would puff up. And it was so obviously annoying and embarrassing and everything. But what happened was I was driving to work one day and it happened again. That morning I woke up and my eyes swelled up. Well, I'm just wanting to go to work. But I'm not going to go to work. Like I can't put my contacts in. I got my glasses on. My eye is so swelled up it's like touching the lens of my glasses. And I'm driving to work because I was like, I'm powering through today. Like I'm not going to miss a day. But I just couldn't bring myself to go in. And I remember driving to the top of this hill over here in Franklin and just being like, God, what is happening? And I texted another leader of mine at the time and he told him what was happening. And he just responded with, man, this is all connected. Like what you're going through in your life, this is connected. And I'm a Christian spiritual person. I believe that the enemy doesn't want things to happen, and so he's attacking as well. And I pulled up a journal entry from December 10th around that time, and what it ended up being was hives. It was internal hives, and no one could ever really explain why they were happening. It was just, I don't know, my adrenaline the stress at home. Mandy and I were working through a bunch of really hard stuff. I was stretching myself here at work in a new way, and it just ended up being too much. And my body was like, nah, like, peace out. I have to react.
Going off.
It was an alarm going off.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what I started to do around that time was when I got to the top of that hill, I just said, God, what is happening? And I just sort of, it was like a turning point kind of a thing. And I drove home. I didn't end up going to work for the morning that day because I didn't want to, I didn't want to deal with everybody. Hey, what's going on? It's happening again. Man. Yeah. And I just didn't want to deal with it. But what got me through that was eventually I got home and I started, I was holding in a lot up to that point. I wasn't telling Mandy the truth. I wasn't really being honest with people at work necessarily. It's not like I was hiding things, but I was just,
you didn't want to burden other people. Where you're like, I can power through. I'll figure it out.
Power through.
I'll deal with this.
Yeah. And so it was around that same time that I just, I prayed to God and I was like, I don't have anything to offer. Like I'm at the bottom. Me and my wife are in trouble. My face is swelling up. It's like just these things are happening. And I just started to write. I started to write what I was actually feeling, at least to God in journaling. I started writing, and God, my face is swelling up. Like I'm pissed about it. What is happening? And I looked up a journal entry before this interview from December 10th, 2010, and it's from that day that I drove to the top of that mountain, this Tennessee hill. It's not like it sounds
for some people it might be a mountain.
Sounds way more epic to call it a mountain. It just says, I couldn't bring myself to go in yet. I know I would just get there and just stare out the window trying to find the best way to express this. I took a beautiful drive into work today and tried to get to the top of the highest hill just to feel closer to you, God. I think I've been under the worst spiritual attack of my life, and Mandy and I are becoming what God wants us to be, and the enemy's not happy about it. The stress over the last 2 weeks has been incredible, and I think that's what the hives and the swelling are coming from. And I'm in. I won't read you the rest of it. It's too personal. But it was just like, all of this is coming, like something is happening. Like I just started to acknowledge that I am stressed, something has to change. And that's kind of the beginning of that face swelling story. Yeah.
Wow. So telling the truth to yourself seems to be the life hack here.
Well,
and praying and journaling and resting, I imagine. I mean, did you take any time off to go, I gotta stop going so hard?
I don't remember taking time off, but I do remember setting aside time in the morning. And it wasn't telling the truth to myself, it was telling the truth to God. And just, I woke up and said, God, I'm frustrated with this today. Here's what's going on. And I just started to tell the truth of what I was actually feeling. And I didn't take days off. I took an hour in the morning where the kids weren't up yet. I didn't have the pressures of the day. And it was just for me to have some Luke time, and for me with God. But I think that it's important, whether you're a believer or not, to have that time to figure out what you think about today before anybody else tells you what to think about the day. And that writing out what was actually going on in my head and my heart and giving that to God was one of the things that helped it start to go away, because it did over the course of the next months. Because when I went to the doctor, they gave me steroids, they gave me all this stuff. None of it helped. Just over time, continuing to work through, tell the truth, journal out what was actually going on in my heart, this stuff has gone away. It doesn't happen anymore. Sometimes I can feel a little tingle in my eyelid and I'm like, oh, maybe this is it. And then nothing happens. But
wow.
Yeah.
So it's been over a decade since then.
Yeah.
What are the practical tools you use to now recognize those warning signs where you're going, hey, I'm headed to this territory. Yeah. Let's not do that. Has that happened more recently?
Yeah. This week, actually. Today's Friday. We're recording this. You probably don't want me to say that because it's whatever. But
it's fine. This peek behind the curtain.
Yeah. It's
Sometimes
Friday
we record on Fridays.
And this week was like a really intense week. I had a vacation last week and I was out and we went to Florida and it was awesome. And then come back to work and I had a bunch of stuff scheduled that I had to be ready for. And there was something, something decent sized every day of the week that I had to be on for and prepare for. And I
kind of
could
looming
really,
in your day.
And by yesterday morning, most of it had happened. And so about 11:30, most of it had happened. And I started to get a headache. And I think it was because it was just adrenaline high all week. And I got through all the things I needed to get through. And I felt just really, really exhausted at it was like 2 or 3 o'clock. Maybe it was Wednesday. I just felt really exhausted and my head was hurting. And I'm staring at the computer still. And I was like, I cannot look at this screen anymore right now. I got to get up. I'm going to go for a walk. I was actually looking for a dark room to just close my eyes for like 45 minutes because my head hurt bad and I had something else to do at 4 that day. So I couldn't just leave. And so I was walking around and I just had to get away and walk. And in this particular case, I walked around our new building and I saw Alex, he's one of our creative directors, and I just said, hey man, how's it going? And he starts talking. He's like, how you doing? And I'm like, well, actually I have a headache and I just needed to get up, get away from my desk and walk around. And we started talking about deep sea fishing and we just got into this other kind of conversation. And then I walked around somebody else and they could tell my head hurt by my face. And he was like, what's going on? I'm like, I just got a headache. And I was just telling the truth. I wasn't trying to be like, I'm tough and everything's fine.
Everything's great.
But over the course of having those conversations, by the time 5:30 hit, I saw the person who asked me if I had a headache, and he points to his head and he's like, how's your head? And I was like, oh man, it's actually gone. I got up, I walked around, I had some conversations. I got with some other people. I took some Advil. That helped too. So
medicine is
let's
good.
not be total. I'm not saying I'm against that, but it just got me out of the element I was in and having a conversation with people, talking. I told the truth of what was happening, and it just sort of starts to release it, But it happened this week, It was just, I can feel it today being Friday. I'm like, man, I'm ready to turn off the motor for a day, or two here on the weekend. And so I've known people that go through their whole week and they are on from early morning till 5, 6 at night, maybe later. And then on the weekends, they have a side gig and they're on morning to, I'm just doing the morning on Saturday. And they just keep going and you just keep pounding the adrenaline, pounding the work and proving yourself. And it's like, dude, no, you gotta slow down. You have to. Like somebody asked if I have big plans for this weekend. I'm like, no, I want to work in the yard,
Yeah.
Like I think doing something that's the opposite of what you do all the week. Like some people might be outside all week and they want to work on a computer on the weekend. That's great. But you have to give yourself real rest and figure out what rest means to you. And for me, I'm just around people all the time. So the weekend is a nice time to turn some of that off.
Yeah.
So,
and I think for the business owners out there, some of them, they're not even working 40-hour weeks. They're doing 50, 60.
Exactly.
I mean, they're on all the time,
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard, especially for them to turn that off
Yeah.
and find that rest
Yeah.
and really get that moment of peace where they go, I got to wake up an extra hour early and do this quiet time and sit or read or do those things. But what you're talking about is what are those things that energize you?
Yeah.
And for some people, it's having a great conversation.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm so tired and I'll find a person and we'll have a great conversation and I'm like, I'm awake now.
Energized.
Yeah, I wasn't physically tired. I was just mentally exhausted. And so finding those things that do energize you, like you're talking about, for some people, just being out in the yard can be one of the most peaceful, most energizing, restful things you can do. So for the business owner that's out there going, okay, Luke, what are some practical things I can go do this weekend, this upcoming week to avoid that burnout, to start to recover if I'm in it now, or to avoid it in the future?
Yeah. Learn about yourself. So I'm sitting here. My assistant Molly was like, she could tell I was just very exhausted yesterday, and she's like, "Well, you have that EntreLeadership interview thing tomorrow. Should we move it?" And I was like, "No, that brings me energy. Like I know that about myself. That having this conversation will give me energy, and that's a good thing. And so learn yourself. I know I'm being sort of contradictory. I love conversations, and then I like to be alone too. And so that's one thing. Figure out yourself, and then do those things that whether it's being with people that gives you energy or it's being alone that gives you energy. The other thing is, and it's really hard, but turning, like the reason I can turn off on the weekend is because the email isn't poking me in the eye all the time. I turn off the notifications. And luckily, not luckily, intentionally, we've created a culture here that it pretty much shuts off a lot of the emails on the weekend and in the evenings. But if you're the leader, if you're the runner of said business, you can start to create the habit for your team that when they email you at 7:30 p.m. or they email you on a Saturday at 11, if you immediately respond, what you're doing is you're training everybody that is the way you want to live, that is the way you want your business to run.
You're setting the tone.
You're setting the tone. And I know you want them to see you hardworking, and yeah, of course you want to be a hard worker, but if you respond quickly, they're going to say, oh, that's how this is. So start to change the habit of when you respond to people. And if they send it at 7 and you just don't respond to the morning, they'll start to get that expectation. And then you can start to say it and be like, hey, if you're probably not going to get a response from me in the evenings because I'm with my family, I'm trying to refresh. And I know that's even harder when you have outside clients who have a different expectation, if you're serving them as their business. But you can work it in to start to be the habit and the tone of, if you're immediately responding all the time at these weird hours of the day, they're going to be like, they're just going to keep asking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if they do that. It was like what movie we were watching? Oh, Storks. I was watching Storks with the kids over the weekend, and there's the parents in this movie are realtors, and they say, we never stop. We'll answer your phone call on Christmas. And, they're missing their kid, and they're being sarcastic in this movie, but start to set the pattern of
get those boundaries in place.
Boundaries up, yeah. And that's
Dave
what
Ramsey
comes to
did
mind.
this. I mean, I remember him saying, hey, I'm emailing the team because he's just firing off emails left and right, and he might be working on a Saturday because he just wants to catch up on some emails for fun.
Yeah.
And he started scheduling the
That's
emails
right.
to fire on Monday morning.
Yeah.
But he'd be sitting there writing them on Saturday, and he found out there's a scheduling feature.
Yeah.
But using that really set the tone for the team that, oh my gosh, Dave's emailing on Saturday. I got to respond ASAP. And it helped create those boundaries. So definitely understanding yourself, setting those boundaries in your life when it comes to, the work-life balance, which we've got Christy right on talking about that all the time. And are there any other practical things? Let's say it's not you, but it's your team. Mm-hmm. How do you avoid someone on your team experiencing burnout? Because you lead a huge team, and I'm sure this stuff floats up to you where you go, hey, this person's struggling over here. I don't know if they're on the edge of a burnout, but they're not doing well. What does that conversation look like that a leader can have with a team member?
Yeah. What I've found also is that it is up to the team member. So we can, I'll tell you what I would say to them here in a second, but ultimately me as the leader, they're still a grown-up human, and I can tell them to stop, and I can tell them to turn this off, and let's cancel these 3 to 5 things, and let's move this. But if they don't internalize that and say, no, I have to do this for myself, my own sanity, then it won't work. Because I've done it. I've been the leader who said, well, let's knock these out, and let's stop doing this. But if they don't actually do it, even though their leader, their boss is saying you don't have to, there's just this internal drive that they can't stop. That's where it's like, hey, go see a counselor. Work that through. What are you trying to prove? What are you striving for that they need to figure out? Now, if I am talking to my team member and they're on the verge of burnout, you as a leader have to just listen to them, and they'll be telling, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What I've done a couple times is I just get a piece of paper out, like a blank piece of paper. I don't try to be distracted. I'm just looking at, I'm like, let's just write down all the things going on. And so it's, well, I've got this squad that's doing this, and I got this team that's doing this, and I'm just writing it down in front of them. And write down, and it ends up being 9 or 10 things, and I'm like, all right, which one is the most important? And then they're usually like, oh, well, yeah, and then also there's this, and they just keep adding to the list. All right, let's pick the 3 that only you can do. And so we'll kind of mark those 1, 2, 3. All right, who could take this one? Well, there's nobody. There's nobody that can take this one. All right, okay. How about this one? Well, I could do that, but they're going to screw it up. The other person's going to screw that. Oh, okay. So I just kind of keep track of those things. And then by the time you'll get to a few that are down on the bottom of the list, and I'm like, all right, do you have to worry about that now? Or can we push that off for a couple weeks? What I'm trying to do is just focus their brain a little bit just on 2 or 3 things. And then you can just say, hey, I don't want you to worry about below the list for the rest of this week. Let's connect Monday. Let's see how you did on this, this, and this. And let's take one step of action, because oftentimes in those top 3 things, they're kind of floaty things where they need to have a conversation with somebody else and they need to do this thing with somebody else and that person's not responding or. And it's like, okay, let's find one thing that can move you in the right direction with each of these top 3 things. So, all right, for this first one, you're stressed about so-and-so not getting back to you. Let's go find him today. Find him today. Tell him what you're worried about. Tell him your concerns. The next one, all right, let's take one small step in that direction. And all you're doing is helping them take a giant cloud of stuff that is weighing on them and giving them a single step. It's just like Dave and the baby steps. There's a giant cloud of stress and debt and we're just saying $1,000. We're just getting you down here, get $1,000. And what that does is it just starts to clarify and take this giant cloud of chaos and give it some focus.
Yeah, just distill it all down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So the leaders, the team members, let's say the leaders out there, and they're going, hey, Luke, this all sounds good. This sounds great, but I'm going to get back to work on Monday, and it's just going to be the same chaos, the same struggle. What encouragement would you give to the leader listening who goes, look, I want to avoid burnout. No one wants to go there. What do I need to do? Maybe it's not practical, but maybe it's just a mindset that they need to go into their week with. Just give them some encouragement.
You're doing a good job out there. So you're either driving right now or you're sitting at your computer and there's 27 emails in your box waiting for your response, and you feel like you're not doing a good job leading Susie, and John's got this other problem, and your new team member's on his phone all the time. You're doing a good job. Keep showing up tomorrow, even in what feels like a wilderness. Come back tomorrow and keep trying. My daughter learned to play the guitar over this last few years, and when she first started playing, she'd put her fingers on these steel strings that are rigid, and she'd push down hard, and it hurt. She would say, Dad, how am I supposed to learn this? It hurts. And it would leave these red lines across her tips of her fingers. But she just showed up again the next day, practiced a few more notes, and she did that for a month, and 2 months, and 6 months, and a year, and another year. And this is 3 or 4 years later, and just last night she goes, Dad, feel my fingers. And I rub my fingers off across the edge of them, and they're tough. And she can play that guitar, and that's what you're doing here. You're learning to play the guitar. You're building the right calluses. So you're doing a good job. Build the boundaries, because you can't practice the guitar all the time or you will be bleeding all the time. You have to stop and let the callus form. And the way that happens is when you're not playing, they have to heal to form that callus. And so set the boundaries. You get back on Monday. Decide a time Monday night where you're going to be done for that day. And turn it off at 6 or 5:30 or whatever is the right thing. Pick a day and just choose a small boundary to hold for yourself. That's what I would say. And if you hear nothing else, you're doing a good job, and come back tomorrow.
I love that. Well, Luke, so much good stuff here, from praying to journaling to processing to resting to delegating to boundaries. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it's going to help the listeners out there avoid that burnout and continue to do the work that we need them to do.
It's an honor to be here.
Some great tips there from Luke Lefevre on avoiding burnout. And as John said earlier in this episode, delegation is key to avoiding burnout. And if you don't feel like you can trust your team enough to delegate to them, then he said fire them and hire people you can actually trust. And while he was probably half joking, hiring and firing is always going to be part of running a business. So you might as well use our 12 steps to a good hire that we outline in the EntreLeader's Guide to Hiring. To get this free guide, text the phrase EL Hire to 33444. Again, text ELHIRE, no spaces, to 33444 or click the link in the show notes. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the show. If you did, leave us a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're a small business owner with 2 to 200 team members, we'd love to hear your feedback on the show and ask you a few questions. Click the link in the show notes to fill out a brief survey to schedule a call with Tim, our producer. You can follow us on social media at EntreLeadership. This episode was produced by Tim Hull, edited by Jacob Harrison, and mixed and mastered by Will Rudder. I'm your host, George Camel, and on behalf of the entire EntreLeadership team, thanks for listening. Until next time, keep learning and keep leading.